Thank you everyone who is joining us on this beautiful Saturday. My name is Anna Martavishki and I'm joining you from Our Revolution National. I'm a regional organizer. Many of you know me and I know for sure all of you and many of you on this chat. There's some great news today I want to share with you all. We have a new Medicare for All bill and we have new co-sponsors and a notable, very important New Jersey congressman among them. So excellent news to share this Saturday morning. On Wednesday, March 17th, on the 1-year anniversary of COVID-19 being confirmed in all 50 states and DC, which also served as a sad reminder that 100 million people remain uninsured or underinsured during a pandemic under our current for-profit employer-based healthcare system. So on March 17th, HR 1976, the Medicare for All Act of 2021 to establish an improved Medicare for All national health insurance program was introduced with 112 co-sponsors, 14 chairpersons among them, and over 300 endorsing organizations on the bill. So tremendous news, a historic day, which was made even more unforgettable by the announcement that after more than 3 years of unrelenting pressure, insistent, consistent actions, bird-dogging by Our Revolution Mammoth members and allies, Frank Pallone, one of the most powerful Democrats in the country and the chair of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, the main committee on healthcare, has signed on to the bill. So this is a major development, a game changer for the future of the legislation. And joining him from New Jersey on the bill are Bonnie Watson-Coleman and Donald Payne. We have already 3 hearings confirmed in small business, energy and commerce, which Frank Pallone has promised us a hearing as well, and the budget committee. So more work to do in New Jersey. We have to get more people from the New Jersey congressional delegation on the bill, and now we will. We are already working on getting more on, but tremendous news. Let's take a moment to celebrate this major victory. And speaking of 1-year anniversaries, this month marks exactly 1 year since we started hosting our monthly calls on Zoom and Facebook Live. We were the first Our Revolution state network nationally to go digital once the COVID lockdowns hit. And we have held powerful meetings since then over Zoom every month. We have done also great grassroots organizing work on the field. We established new chapters, passed local resolutions, elected progressives to local offices, upended undemocratic party convention rules, which we will talk about later in the call, grew our membership and formed a new and diverse state organizing committee. What a tremendous organizing that took place over the last year. So kudos to everyone. I want to give a shout out to Carol Gagg, who has been instrumental in our Medicare for All victories, who has been working so long on single payer. So I want to just mention her name. She's with Our Revolution Ocean County and a couple of other organizations. So again, tremendous work. We are going to hear from some new chapter leaders. And with that, I just want to mention one last thing. We are in the midst of our first ever membership drive. Our Revolution is, as you well know, a grassroots group that doesn't take any corporate money. We only rely on small dollar donations. We have done a tremendous work over the last couple of years here in New Jersey with tangible victories that you have just heard about. So please donate. I'll put the link in the chat. $5 a month will make you a sustaining donor. It's really important that you sign up and help us carry out this work. There's so much more that we can do and we will do with your help here in New Jersey. And with that, I'll kick it over to Mario DeSantis, a new chapter leader with Gloucester County, to talk about what we are doing next for Medicare for All.
All right. Hello, good morning, and welcome from South Jersey. My name is Mario DeSantis, and I'm the organizer for Our Revolution Gloucester County. With the introduction of this week's new Medicare for All bill and the celebration of Women's History Month, it's important to highlight the fact that Medicare for All is gender equity. Medicare for All would cover long-term care, which is a responsibility that most often falls on our female friends. Medicare for All would guarantee health care to women in communities of color, communities that are most often overrepresented in poor health outcomes. You know, the story is personal for me. As I watched my mother suffer with osteoporosis and fighting with her insurance company to cover her injections, I'm reminded of how much good a Medicare for All system would do for our sisters and mothers. and it's a fight that I pledge to sustain. Down here in Gloucester County, we've been working on passing municipal resolutions and have been targeting Congressman Donald Norcross to ask for his support for the new bill. We launched a petition, so if you are in Congressional District 1, please sign and share, and you can find that link in our chat box. As we move to put pressure on Norcross, I'm asking for stories of those who have been burdened by our for-profit healthcare system and the support of local Medicare for All activists. So if you or someone you know in the CD1 area is interested in joining our fight, please email me at desantis.mb@gmail.com, and that link will be in the chat box as well, or you can head over to Facebook on Our Revolution Gloucester County. At this time, Andrea is going to introduce our first guest.
Thank you, Maria. Our first guest is Assemblywoman Brittany Timberlake from the 34th Legislative District. She also sits as Vice Chair of Community Development and Affairs, as well as the Joint Committee of Economic Justice and Equal Employment. It is a pleasure to have Assemblywoman Timberlake here to discuss the gravity of the People's Bill as we have come to the reality of over 14,000 impending COVID-related evictions in her district. As she is not only fighting for housing for New Jerseyans, she is also here to discuss the importance of women's health. And with no further delay, I will turn the call over to you, Assemblywoman. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, everyone. My name is Brittany Timberlake. Assemblywoman is really just a title. It's not really about the title. It's what you're able to do with it, right? I just want to say thank you so much to Our Revolution for your fight to make sure that there is a grassroots movement to fulfill the needs in the community and to hold elected officials' feet to the fire. And I really appreciate that about Our Revolution. So thank you for that kind introduction. I know that we're here talking about, I will speak about the People's Bill too, but I know it's Women's History Month and we're talking about women's rights through and through. And I was incredibly proud to be a part of the Equal Pay Act in New Jersey, which is the strongest Equal Pay Act in the entire country. And also to have authored and got across the finish line. It is now law, an onco-fertility bill, which is if someone has, think of cancer and the chemotherapy and how harsh that treatment is on the body, that the insurance companies have to actually pay for there to be a preservation of the reproductive organs for both men and women, as far as if a woman wants to have a baby after going through chemotherapy, she's able to, and the same thing for men. And now insurance companies are paying for that to be a right for people. Also breastfeeding at work, that's very important. You might hear my little 2-month-old in the background cooing, and you might also hear my 3-year-old run up the stairs in a minute, hollering and screaming. So I will be as brief as I possibly can while making sure I answer all of your questions if you have any, of course. We also have introduced a home birthing bill because we do believe in a woman's right to choose, but we don't believe that it starts or should stop at that conversation should not start or stop as it relates to abortion. It should also be a woman's right to choose for all things and to be able to take command of her fertility. And that includes, should a woman desire to birth at home, the insurance company should pay for that as well. Because currently speaking, women are birthing at home, but they have to pay out of pocket. And therefore, it's really just a luxury that's afforded to mainly people who are more wealthy. The Listening to Mothers Act is something I've been very proud of, and that establishes a survey so that women can report what it is that they're feeling in the hospital, and we can hopefully get rid of this whole bias against women of color in particular who have such a high rate of dying while giving birth, as well as the infants dying too, mainly because of biases and the color of their skin. And there's another bill that I offered, which is the midwives and physicians. It requires them to tell the woman all of her birthing options, because that too also contributes to a person's, the high death rate for mothers as well as infants is being pushed or steered to one way of birthing instead of having known all that was available to you. So that's something that's very important. We know that People of color are often at the epicenter of all of these issues. I've been very proud to be representing my community in the assembly. I was sworn into office 9 months pregnant, and right away we hit the ground running. In my first term, we got $15 an hour minimum wage. I played a very instrumental role in getting that across the board, and also a very controversial bill, which was, interesting enough, only passed by one vote, and that is the independent investigation in the event someone loses their life during interaction with law enforcement. And that was about 2 years ago. And now we see what happened with George Floyd, which seems to have woken up the entire country, which is amazing to me. I have mixed feelings about that because people of color, as a Black woman myself, we've been crying foul play for many, many years, and have had, horrific situations to be able to point to. But maybe it was the calming of the pandemic where everybody was home watching the television and the news. And I'm glad that now the nation is on fire to do something about it. But we were one of the first to actually pass that here in New Jersey. And the housing bill, the People's Bill, is incredibly important. It's something that I have been mainly focusing on this entire pandemic. The reason why is because housing is access to all things. You really can't have a serious conversation about, let's say a child performing well in school, or, healthcare and all of these things if you're talking about someone who doesn't have a home. Home has to be first, right? Because all other things are going to be out of whack if it's not. That's why housing is so incredibly important for me to fight for. Furthermore, when you look at the issues of redlining that have happened in our country, when you look at housing discrimination and so many different things that have kept Black and brown people out of opportunity for home ownership. Home ownership is a bedrock to build the economy. It's a bedrock to build financial security, and so many other things. And unfortunately, our state leads the nation in foreclosures. We are number one in the country in foreclosures. And number one in New Jersey is our urban areas. And we have got to be able to minimize foreclosures. So the People's Bill speaks to that as an issue, but it also speaks to the plight that renters and landlords are experiencing right now too, which is you have people whose jobs were deemed to be non-essential. And rightfully so, we had to flatten the curve. I support our governor and the work that he has been doing. It's amazing. We had to save lives. Saving lives is number one. And but unfortunately, people were deemed non-essential, and then their unemployment took a long time to kick in. Debt is racking up. And there's some people that may have missed a few payments of their rent. And the bill talks and speaks to what needs to happen after the moratorium lifts on the ban on evictions. So we believe that after, the landlord and the tenant need to come up with an affordable repayment plan, in addition to there being funding to help supplement what was past due, and what the landlord is expecting. So the bill will make sure that landlords are made whole over time, while making sure that tenants have a fighting chance to keep a roof over their head, combined with funding being thrown at the issue. So it's a practical, holistic solution, 360 degrees all the way around. And it's something that I've been fighting my ass off for. And I think that it's something that everyone should care about. We talk about the achievement gap in our schools. Wait till you see the achievement gap when our children are displaced and are made homeless, and they're currently learning from their classrooms right now, which is where many of them, their living room. And unfortunately, their parents are stressed out about whether or not they're going to be able to keep a roof over their head. So this bill kind of puts it all into perspective. And I want to thank everyone's support, because there's been some people on the call who have been extremely, extremely helpful. Justin, I see you. Patricia Campos, you do so much work throughout the state. I really appreciate you, and everyone else on the call too. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. At this time, if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and put that in the Q&A section or in the chat. And as we're waiting for people to put in their questions, Assemblywoman, with the employer support with women breastfeeding in the workplace? Are we seeing the numbers rise of breastfeeding numbers? And is there support for women of color who are choosing to breastfeed? Assemblywoman, I think you're on mute. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Assemblywoman Timberlake, you're on mute.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I thought I hit it. Yes, honey, hold on one second. So it's important for women of color to know like the importance of breastfeeding. I'm like a big advocate about that. And, you know, as far as in the workplace right now, your employer is supposed to have a room where you can go to breastfeed, but they only have to have that available for a year. Personally, I actually breastfed my first son for 2 years. And, you know, I hope to do the same thing for this little peanut that's right here on my shoulder. We'll see. But it's just really about normalizing it, right? How come it's okay for us to see breasts on beer commercials, right? But people think it's so weird whenever a mother is nourishing her baby with nutrients that, quite frankly, formulas haven't even figured out how to truly 100% duplicate. So, you know, and help. The best thing, and if someone can't breastfeed, you know, it's never about shaming that either, or just simply doesn't want to. That's okay. You know, I never judge another woman. I think that whenever you have children too, you start to realize that judging women has to go out the window. And, you know, it's very important, though, to let people know the importance of breastfeeding and for there to be a support system put in place should they desire to do that.
Thank you, Assemblywoman, and congrats on your newborn. Really, it's definitely inspiring to see the balance and the work you continue to strive to do. So we won't hold you much longer. We'll let you get back to those adorable babies.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining.
Take care. Keep fighting.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn over to my co-host, Mario, to introduce our next guest.
Yes, thank you, Assemblywoman Timberlake, and congratulations on your new baby. Our next guest is not only an Our Revolution New Jersey member and state committee, but also the host and producer of Activista Rise Up, Dr. Patricia Campos. Patricia is currently the executive director of the Worker Institute, ILR Cornell University, and has been on the forefront fighting for women's rights, workers' rights, voting rights, and immigration reform. It's easy to see how she's been recognized as one of New Jersey's most influential political leaders. As we've embarked on the year anniversary of our first COVID case, Patricia is here to speak with us today about how these families have been hit the hardest with COVID deaths. Here in New Jersey, 50% of COVID deaths were Latino men. The racial disparities in COVID have left families in the Latino community with the difficult decision of feeding their children or death. As we listen to Dr. Campos speak, our attendees are welcome to type their questions in the chat box. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Campos to elaborate more.
Good morning, Our Revolution. Good morning to all the activists and all my friends and colleagues on this call. As I was sitting here, and I was so glad to hear Assemblywoman Timberlake. She's one of the fighters that we have in the assembly. And, you know, as I listened to her and manage, you know, her baby in her arms and doing the work of legislating and thinking about creative policy solutions to our issues, I am grateful for the work that all of you do, that you have done to elevate the need for progressive issues in this state, to have a policy outlet. And I think we have much more work to do, but the victory of having Palom sign up with Medicare for All, I think is an example of how unrelenting activism and unrelenting organizing pays off, and that we are raising the consciousness of New Jersey, and we are holding Democrats in New Jersey accountable. So I am so excited to be part of this revolution with all of you in New Jersey. I was thinking, what can I say about the 1 year anniversary and the impact that this pandemic has had on people of color in Black and Brown communities? And I was thinking of the video where Nina Turner talks about how she's mad, and she's mad about injustice, and she's mad about inequality. And I say, this week and last week, I was mad. I was angry. I was furious. And about the article that came out saying that 50% of the death of COVID-19 cases in New Jersey, almost 50% are Latino men. And the headline basically said, we are losing a whole generation of fathers. And to think about the impact that has on our Latino community in New Jersey, which is 20%, on the working families of this state, for that headline not to cause an uproar. The outrage for me was the lack of outrage from politicians, the lack of outrage from our governor's team, the lack of outrage from the legislature, that they didn't see that headline and they didn't think about their own families, and they didn't think about the generations of young kids that will grow up in this state without a father. So I was angry and I was outraged. And I want to turn that outrage into passion, to recommit ourselves to figuring out why is it that despite the fact that most of those men who died, those people who are sick and getting COVID-19 and don't have the option like me to work from home, why is it that we have not figured out how to provide relief for them? Why is it that they don't have access to healthcare? And when they first get sick, they can go to seek assistance. I have heard stories in Plainfield, New Jersey, where entire families, the mother and the father and the kids, have to isolate themselves for 2 weeks, sick and sweating and dying because they cannot go to the hospital because they're afraid of the bills. I have heard stories of families who get kicked out of their homes, and the landowner throws their clothes on the streets, and then they come to community organizations trying to figure out how they can find housing. I have heard stories of a mother and a father whose son is schizophrenic, and they have to go to work even though they know they are sick because they need to pay for their son's medicine, which is expensive, and they don't get any assistance to pay for weekly medicine to keep their son functional. Those are real stories, and they are happening right here in New Jersey. So the fight for Medicare for all is a long fight, but it's a real fight. But the fight to help Latino families and Black and brown families in New Jersey survive, it is a real fight right now. So I am asking you to join me in signing up the petition that we have, that we are circulating, calling on Governor Murphy to enact Recovery for All. We are asking the state to find the resources to provide $600 relief to undocumented taxpayers, because they are paying into the system of unemployment insurance, and because they do not have federal tax ID, they do not qualify for any type of assistance from the federal government. Now, we have been asking for relief from the Governor Murphy and from the New Jersey legislature for over a year now. For over the last 9 months, they told us that once the federal government enacted federal relief and to the state, that they will figure out a way to provide relief for New Jersey immigrants. Now we have federal relief. We did our work. We kicked out Donald Trump from the White House and we elected President Biden. Now President Biden and the Democratic Senate and the Congress passed a relief bill that provided aid to states impacted like New Jersey and New York. So now we have federal relief for states, and now New Jersey can find some money somewhere from our state coffers so that we can provide $600 of weekly relief for for undocumented ITIN holders. That will allow families to not to have to make the choice between going to work, getting sick and dying, and feeding their families. It's unconscionable that in a 1 year after the pandemic hit us, that a whole generation of Latino men who put their lives on the line so that middle-class New Jerseyans could stay home and be safe. Now, there's another injustice because it keeps building up. Even though the Latino population has been hit heavily by this pandemic, and the African American population has been devastated as well from this pandemic. If you look at who's getting vaccinated, the Latino community, only 5% of Latino community has been vaccinated. I think it's about 7% for African American. That means that those who are suffering the burden of the pandemic are still not even getting access to vaccines. Now, they will tell you anybody can sign up on the website, anybody can ask for an appointment. It took me weeks and weeks and weeks of trying and logging on websites and doing all that so my parents could get a vaccination. Now, I have the time and the skill, and I have very reliable Wi-Fi. But if you live in a city, in an urban city, and you are poor, you don't have access to reliable Wi-Fi, and you don't have the luxury of sitting in front of a computer hour after hour waiting to make an appointment. So we need some sort of Marshall Plan for our inner cities in which we can create brigades or some sort so that we can send them to vaccinate our community. Now, that I am not going to focus on that because there's better experts than me on talking about how do you attack this crisis from a public health initiative. What I'm here to say is that if we depend on low wage essential workers to keep New Jersey functioning, we must also provide relief for them. So I ask you to join me in this campaign. Together we Make the Road New Jersey and Lupe PAC, we will, in Latino Action Network, we're launching a voter outreach effort to talk to Latino voters about about taking action and demanding public support for the tragedy that is happening in our Latino neighborhoods. And I ask you to join me by signing the petition and by joining our call to demand from the New Jersey legislature and for Governor Murphy to enact recovery for all, for undocumented workers in New Jersey. Thank you, and I can answer any questions. I'll stay here for the rest of the.
Thank you, Dr. Campos. I really appreciate all the work that you have been doing. I see we have one question, but you have already answered that during your discussion. So at this time, we're going to move on to our next speaker. As we all know, there is a huge push right now for a labor movement with the PRO Act and Amazon workers unionizing. Our third guest, Christine DeRuiz Culpepper, has been part of the movement and workers' rights for women in the building trades. Not only is she a proud LIUNA Local 79 member, she is an Eastern Region representative to the LIUNA Women's Caucus and a founding leader of Building Trades for Worker Democracy. She is also an organizer of rank and file members of the building trades who are heavily involved in labor, community, and political activism, and is a member of the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement. She also helped create the award of Women's History Month in her local and created a members assistance program for those experiencing domestic violence. It is a personal pleasure to introduce and turn the call over to my union sister, Christine Culpepper DeRuiz. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Our Revolution New Jersey, for having me. I want to say thank you for highlighting women and uplifting women in the construction industry. A lot of people see women in the trades as an anomaly, but you and I are both proof that yes, we exist, and no, we're not going anywhere.
Christine, I'm very interested in hearing about your rank and file work that you have been doing and what that means for women in the construction industry and the longevity of their careers in the trades.
So, Andrea, I've been active, for my entire career with the building trades. And one of the things that I learned very early on was that in this male-dominated industry, you sort of had to make your way, fight through, sort of these obstacles and barriers that were, laid out for you, that were put in front of you at the time. Things have gotten much better, but those, obstacles and barriers still exist, especially for some women in, other areas and other industries, right? But one thing I do know is that when women unite and take action, they make changes, right? So, I was, very adamant about, being a shop steward in my organization. And, at the time, there were very few women. And, when you're seeking these kinds of positions or you're, trying to get change in a male-dominated industry, what you really needed is support from the leadership. And thankfully, in my local, the leadership has been very supportive. And especially now, the leadership does listen when the members speak. And so the kind of work that I have been doing, not only internally with the union, but in the community, has really, brought about some of the changes, that we have created in our local.
As we're seeing a shift in a huge labor movement right now with unionizing, what are the changes that we've seen just in this past year that the PRO Act has given us, but also what we're experiencing and seeing with the Amazon unionizing?
So, in the last few years, what I've noticed, and I've always been active in my community talking about unions, right? And in the last couple of years, unions have become very hot, right? Very popular, especially among young people and professionals, right? People in all types of industries and all types of profession are organizing. And, it really does bring to light some of the things that workers, right, wage workers have had to deal with, right? This pandemic has brought to light a lot of, the precarious situations that wage workers are in, especially women. And so, the PRO Act is getting a lot of attention, especially now with what is going on with the Amazon workers in Alabama. The workers who are organizing, again, are mostly Black and mostly women. And so, in a right to work state, right, we have to understand how this PRO Act could be so important to workers, right? And so, we continue to see things, and, happening that bring attention and support to these workers, not only union workers, but also those who are seeking to organize unions.
Thank you. And also with, say that the PRO Act and say with unionizing and the community work, are we seeing a shift with more women joining the trades and seeing that as an option of a career choice?
Well, thankfully we have a lot of really great pre-apprentice programs and apprenticeship programs that allow for those opportunities for women in our communities, right? The numbers have doubled for women coming into apprenticeships, right? And so the issue is later on, once they've graduated an apprentice program, do they stay in? Because there was a recent report put out, and the report says that about 3.5 of the people in the construction industry are women, right? And some of those are also women in staff positions, also in management positions. So the numbers really haven't changed that much in over 20 years. So what happens along the way is that once they've graduated an apprentice program, maybe they find themselves, alone out there. So, things like women's committees are really helpful, to sort of continue that support system that apprenticeship programs provide.
Thank you so much, Christine. I really appreciate all the work that you're doing. And it's really inspiring to see the support for women in the trades, especially getting those numbers growing. As you said, with the apprenticeship program, the number of women that are joining is truly remarkable.
Yeah, we just, I'm just reading that report about 300,000 women are in the construction trades, right? Are in the construction industry, and the vast majority of those women are union, right? And so people need to understand, like, for women to be, successful in this industry, right? You need longevity, and you need things like unions that protect women, right? And support women throughout their, careers in the industry, right? Better wages, things like, pensions, things like medical that aren't provided for our counterparts in the non-union sector of the industry. So I would say about 99% of the women in the trades are, women in the union construction industry. So people need to understand, hey, listen, why this is so important, right? And continue to support things like, apprenticeships, right? Continue to support wherever you see actions where the union building trades are at. This is developing, opportunities, not just for men, right? But people of color in our communities and women, right? We do exist in this industry, right? We want it to be something that is more common than it is uncommon.
Thank you, Christine. And I really appreciate your time joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Andrea.
Again, the fight and stuff for equality in the workplace is truly amazing. The work that you've been doing, not only in your community, but in your union as well.
Yeah.
At this time, I'm going to kick it back over to Mario to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you. And thank you to Christine for breaking these stereotypes in the workplace for women. Our final speaker for today, Nedia Morsi, is an organizing director at Make the Road, New Jersey. She supervises the organization's Youth Power Project, the Student Success Center, and Make the Road, New Jersey's organizing committees in Elizabeth, Perth Amboy, and Passaic. She's been named one of Insider New Jersey's top millennial leaders of 2018 and 19, and is the former Institute Chair for the New Leaders Council New Jersey. In 2020, she was nominated by Governor Murphy to participate in the Student Success Working Group of the Office of the Secretary of Higher Education. As we listen to Nedia speak, our attendees are welcome to type their questions in the chat box. And at this time, I'm going to turn the call over to Nedia to speak about immigration reform and how our current system has been failing immigrant communities.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Mario, and thanks everybody for organizing this call. So before I talk about where we are on a pathway to citizenship for all 11 million undocumented people in the country, I wanted to first echo Dr. Campos. Our communities have been fighting for relief for the last year. And I think it's really important to underline that we are essential workers. We are not sacrificial people. And so if you haven't already, please sign the petition. It'll send a direct email to Governor Murphy and to your legislators. If we don't have a plan for giving 500,000 people who live in New Jersey the ability to make a decision about not to go to work if they're feeling ill, well, we will just not get out of the pandemic. There's not a question about that. And I just quickly sort of, to drive the point home, I remember within the first 48 hours of the pandemic, our hotline received more than 500 phone calls, and that doesn't include the hundreds of phone calls that we got directly from our larger than 2,000 membership. People were freaking out because their job had shut down or their hours had gotten reduced. Every so often, I think about what that must feel like to not know, there's a virus that we don't have a lot of information about. Your job has shut down, or they've told you to call back in a week, or the hours have been reduced, or you actually just walk to work and it's closed. And you don't have a way to apply for relief. You have no access to unemployment. There's a pantry line that you see at some local churches. The lines are around the block. And sometimes you wait and there's nothing left by the time you get there. And you think a month, you think 2 months, and then it's 11 months later, and the state that you have given so much to has given you nothing. So this is really truly a fight about respect and dignity. So if you haven't already signed the petition, please sign the petition that you're seeing in the chat. And you can, PM me or Dr. Campos if you're interested in joining our text bank. We have made a commitment to contact 100,000 voters in this very important election year to remind voters about what has happened to our community and what has been our state response to getting our entire community out of this pandemic. So I want to talk about immigration reform and where we are on a pathway to citizenship for all 11 million people. And we're in a really historic moment. As outside of the pandemic, right? We're in a movement moment that generations have been working towards to create that would provide the conditions to allow a pathway to citizenship for all people. And so I kind of want to take you on a journey on how we got here and how we're sort of living in some similar moments from 2008 and 2012. So before 2012, young people's lives were in limbo, and schools became a very natural organizing space for young people to connect, undocumented young people to connect, to share their stories, to talk about sort of the hurdles that were facing them as they were preparing to think about life after high school. And they were mobilizing each other. And I'm sure some folks are very familiar. If you look up immigration reform in the 2008, 2012 era, you'll see a lot of cap and gown actions. And this was really, young people, undocumented young people stepping into their power, recognizing that they had a community and felt, this was a symbolism, this idea of the cap and gown was something symbolic that people could connect to. But before I keep going, I just want to preface that this fight has always been about all of us. It's always been about 11 million undocumented people. It is the media that has made it about youth and who is more deserving, right? And we want to think about, how, the industries in which undocumented immigrant people work in, that really doesn't allow for people to come together and share experience and build together. And schools really offered that space for young undocumented people. So in 2012, Youth Organizing won DACA. It is a program that protects young people from deportation and offers them a work permit. And we knew it wasn't enough. And one thing that doesn't really get publicized as much is how much young people and their parents continued to organize and fought for DAPA in 2014. That was an executive order that was like the DACA program. It allowed parents that had US citizen children and resident children the same sort of opportunities, right? Protection from deportation, access to a work permit, access to a driver's license. It included 5 million people, and it was struck down by the courts shortly after. And as we continue to fight for more, right, to think beyond DACA over the next 2 years, the Trump administration came into office. And I'm sure folks have, already know the history here. We spent the last 4 years fighting to keep DACA. It was constantly challenged in the courts, but we won. And a little more beyond DACA, in 2019, we were able to pass the Dream and Promise Act. And what we were able to win just this past week in the House, the edited Dream and Promise, was even better. A pathway to citizenship for all people that currently have TPS, and all those who entered the country at 18 or younger, as opposed to 19 and younger, which was what it was in last year's version of the Dream and Promise Act. This legislation would include 3.5 million undocumented people of the total 11. And here, right, this moment that we find ourselves this very week is the same pivotal moment that we were at in 2012, right? When we were, young people had organized, fought, and won, and then we're ready to get back in and think about all of us and our entire family. And so what I meant at the top when I said that generations have been working to create the conditions to make a pathway to citizenship a reality for all. Right now, in addition to the Dream and Promise Act, there are 3 other bills that would provide a pathway to citizenship. We call these trains, and these trains were introduced over because of the consistent pressure that organizing groups have put on their legislatures over the last decade. We had learned from what happened in 2012, and we came back in 2020 stronger and ready than ever. So all pathways to citizenship, right? The name of the game is all paths must lead to citizenship for as many people as possible. We have the Farm Workers Modernization Act, which provide an expedited pathway for agricultural workers. We have the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021, which would provide every single person a pathway to citizenship. This is the most progressive bill of its kind, and Senator Menendez is a champion on this bill because immigrant communities have pushed him on this issue. We have the Citizenship for Essential Workers Act, which would put essential workers and their families on a pathway to citizenship, right? Those who have worked so that we could stay at home. And with all this movement, more than ever, we need people rallying to take action and to keep the pressure on. Even though President Biden has issued a deportation moratorium, more than 30,000 Black and Asian immigrants have been deported, and it's only been the first 50 days. And so, we really want to underline the urgency, right? Just because there is a new administration doesn't mean the need for immigration reform has gone away, right? Just because it's not kids in cages doesn't mean that there's not still people sitting in jails and detention centers right now all across the country, and many who are being deported silently. Vietnamese immigrants, Black immigrants who are being deported silently every single day, and we need to fight to protect our communities. And I think, just sort of to leave it off, because I think sometimes we sort of scratch our heads and we think, it's been more than 30 years since we've had real comprehensive immigration reform. And, maybe it's still just the politics of the moment. And maybe the stars just aren't aligned, but there's absolutely no reason that Congress can't deliver within the first 100 days. This has to be a top issue for our communities, for our legislators. And we've sort of seen how the apathy at the federal level has trickled down into our state and our localities. We're in a year that undocumented people have received absolutely no relief. And that vibe, that culture is trickling down from the federal government, this apathy and this inaction. So I'm hoping that everybody on the call will take action with us. Please sign the petition that's being dropped in the chat. Share it with 5 friends. And on April 20th, join us. We are marking Biden's first 100 days in Jersey City. And we're doing a full report card, and we want to be together with all of you. You can follow Make the Road New Jersey on Facebook or at Make the Road NJ on Instagram or Twitter for more details. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nettie. It looks like we have a lot of interest in the chat box, and I'll be sure to forward you those emails. This is a community that contributes to all aspects of our economy, and this issue deserves our focused attention. These are communities that deserve our support and empathy, not apathy. So thank you very much. If we have another question, are progressive groups organizing together to get rid of the filibuster? Okay. Thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to introduce Joe, who's going to speak on the Mercer County Convention and his victories.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Marchica. I'm the chair of Our Revolution Trenton Mercer. It's our local Mercer County Our Revolution chapter. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about some of the events of the past few days. I'm sure many of you are aware, New Jersey's got a very, very unique primary election process. Because our ballots are designed to heavily favor one slate of candidates on the county line, the Democratic convention in each county that issues the endorsements that put those candidates on the line can all but decide elections just by granting that ballot position. Recent research shows that this is worth about 35% of the vote in a given primary election, and it's probably the biggest reason that it's been over a decade since we've had an incumbent on the county line lose at the state level or higher. Over a decade. There are a number of efforts across New Jersey to try to change this elitist system, but in the meantime, our own chapter in Mercer County organized a group of progressives ahead of the Mercer County Convention, specifically convention delegates to try to make change within this system. So there was a hotly contested race coming into the convention for county commissioner. There were 6 commissioner candidates, 4 of them challengers, 2 incumbents, running for 3 seats. Now, to add to this elitist system, it's tradition in New Jersey to endorse incumbent candidates by acclamation so they can basically stay in office indefinitely without ever having to see a meaningful vote. This is blatantly undemocratic and also against the bylaws of the Mercer County Democratic Convention. So we organized a group of progressive convention delegates and other activists to take action. And we started by creating and signing a petition to oppose the rules report that was making this rules change in line with their tradition. It got over 180 signatures by the time that the convention actually happened. We had one of our members, Fran Carroll, bring a motion to the floor. She was a convention delegate to redact the change. And then for about 15 solid minutes for discussion afterwards, we had 10 or more convention delegates speak up in favor of redacting the report to prevent the incumbents from being protected. There were only 3 people who spoke up in opposition to this motion. The motion passed 65-35, and that was victory number 1 on the night. But this was necessary just so we could have the election in the first place. That's how crazy this whole system is. So on to the actual election, we had 3 excellent candidates that we endorsed. One of the candidates they were running against was a 27-year incumbent who 2 years ago had voted to approve the purchase of an armored vehicle for hundreds of thousands of dollars and had fallen out of favor with portions of the committee. So it took 3 rounds of voting, but one of our endorsed candidates, challenger Terrence Stokes, beat her on the 3rd ballot, 53 to 47. That's victory number 2. Now, why is this important? Both Terrence and our other endorsed candidate, the incumbent Sam Frisbee, are on board for ballot reform, expanding free college in Mercer County, implementing the Civilian Oversight Board for police, and much, much more we can get excited about at the county policy-wise. So this is a really big deal. And this stuff usually does not happen in New Jersey. This is incredibly unusual given our political system. So I just want to mention that this is how we win. I encourage all of you to look into your local groups, look into your county committees. If you can get enough progressives or progressive allies on county committee, you build coalitions. Not everyone has to necessarily be as progressive as we really want them to be, but they can be allies. And we get in the room, we build coalitions, we organize, we persuade, and we focus on good progressive policy. And that is how you win in these types of battles. And that's how you can make really good progressive change at the local and county level. So we're going to throw some links up in chat for our local Mercer County chapter. There's an onboarding document. It's got a bunch of really useful links to our social media, email list signups, our Slack channel, and entrance surveys. There's a bunch of good stuff on there. And there's also my email, our chapter email, ortrentonmercer@gmail.com. If you just want to go look for us on social, we're all at ourrevnj. And I also want to mention we're going to be having an online happy hour on April 9th. That's our second online happy hour. The first one was a real blast. So if you want to join us, just again, follow us on social, jump on our email list, you'll get an invite. And I want to mention, this is really, really crucial. Our revolution as a whole was key in this effort, and this is the sort of work that is very unique to what our group does. So please consider joining as a member. Please consider donating and supporting our work, because a lot of the infrastructure that goes into this work comes from the national chapter. So it's really, really important. So speaking of ballot reform, like I said, New Jersey is working on a bunch of issues across the board to try to push forward and abolish the line and fix our primary ballot so we can have a real democratic system. And one of these efforts is we have at least 2 Our Revolution members who are plaintiffs on a lawsuit suing the county clerk to try to change these undemocratic ballot practices that violate our First Amendment rights. I'm one of those plaintiffs, actually, from when I ran for county committee back in the summer. So the reason the suit is filed against county clerks is because they are the single most important elected official for abolishing the line. While the county committee chairs have the power to issue endorsements, county clerks are the ones who have the final say on how the ballot is laid out. So if we elect a progressive to county clerk, we can fix our ballots to look like every other state besides New Jersey and open things up for candidates who aren't incumbents and party insiders. And that means more progressive candidates can win. So the next logical step, besides suing them to fix this, why don't we just replace them? Let's put progressives in power into these positions who won't need a lawsuit to do the right thing. And it's for this reason that I am thrilled to announce that Our Revolution National has endorsed my fellow plaintiff on the line lawsuit, Miko Lucide, for Atlantic County Clerk. Miko's awesome. He is a progressive champion devoted to transparent, accessible, and accountable government through a fair ballot and community outreach. Not only would he abolish the line, he has a vision to transform the Atlantic County Clerk's Office into a hub for local political involvement and activism, which is incredibly exciting in my opinion. Congrats on the national endorsement, Miko. I'm really thrilled for you, and good luck tomorrow at the Atlantic County Convention. All right, thanks guys for your time, and back to Anna Marta.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Mario. Thank you, Andrea. What an amazing lineup of guests we had today. And I'm so thrilled to hear from awesome local chapter leaders who are doing the great work of grassroots organizing and changing things for the better from the bottom up. So with that, I just want to do a very quick recap of what we have done on the national level. You are seeing here on the screen our 4-point plan. And as Assemblywoman Brittany Timberlake gave the shout out to Our Revolution, we are here in New Jersey holding Democrats accountable. We are getting progressives elected to county committee, as Joe has mentioned, and we are pushing for progressive reforms at every level of representation. We can't slow down though. We need you to help us keep organizing, keep the pressure up inside and outside. And we are winning, as you have seen. We have to continue winning. So sign up in the chat to become a sustaining member. Just this week, Our Revolution members held a nationally live stream press conference in Washington, D.C. to call on Congress to pass the PRO Act, which is a landmark pro-labor bill that would roll back decades of anti-union legislation. We have spoken about that with a local organizer here. The House passed the bill, and now we are pushing Democrats in the Senate to get the job done. This week, we also held a rally and press conference in Washington for the introduction of the Medicare for All Act of 2021. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell from Michigan joined us, spoke at our rally. Then we are also fighting for the People Act. We are fighting to save our democracy, as we are doing it here at the grassroots level in New Jersey as well. GOP lawmakers across the country continue to push baseless claims of election fraud in order to pass voter suppression bills. As you well know, they have already introduced 253 bills in 43 states to obstruct voting. That's why Our Revolution supports and endorses the For the People Act, which is a landmark bill that will protect voting rights and make sure our government works for the people. The bill has passed the House and now it is in the Senate. The PRO Act, the Medicare for All Act, the For the People Act are all landmark progressive bills that have passed the House. But if we want to get these or any other pieces of progressive legislation enacted, the Senate will need to end the filibuster. Someone asked in the chat which group is organizing to end the filibuster. It is us. Our Revolution is organizing to fix the Senate. We are part of the Fix the Senate coalition. We are pressuring Joe Biden and Senate Democrats to end the filibuster. And Joe Biden is kind of moving on this issue. So keep working with us. You can sign up to join us at the link in the chat. I'm hoping that one of my colleagues is going to put that link in there for you. With that being said, I want to again emphasize we are doing our first ever membership drive, and Our Revolution is unique in our focus on transforming the Democratic Party from the inside and from the outside. And we have, I'm sure, illustrated that work on this call today for you. This week has shown that our strategy works. County committee members, we got elected to county party positions, are making pro-democracy changes inside at party conventions everywhere in the state, and our groups are effectively changing what's politically possible by pressuring reps at every level outside. With the power of the protest, we have done that with Fran Pallone, and that is a major development, a major victory that we have gotten for Medicare for All. So I'm encouraging all of you to become a member, support our work. You can join for as little as $5. The link is going to be in the chat. We are sending out membership cards as we speak, so you will also receive a cool illustration of your membership with a $5 donation for a month. Every month. All right, so with that, I want to quickly mention chapter calls. Our Revolution chapters are organizing in every county. Upcoming calls are just right tomorrow. Our Revolution Essex is meeting tomorrow, March 21st at 2 p.m. I'll post the link for you in the chat. And Our Revolution Middlesex is meeting on Tuesday, March 30th at 8 p.m. All right, national calls to action. We are fighting to get Nina Turner into Congress. We are organizing in the neighborhoods. We are organizing through phone banking. We are hosting phone banks every Sunday and Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. So please sign up in the chat. Her election date was just announced is August 3rd. So we have a date. We need to keep doing the work. It is down to the wire. Let's get her elected. It will be a game changer. On Sunday, Our Revolution Colorado monthly meeting will discuss local Medicare for All initiatives and the fight to protect voting rights. And on Monday, every single Monday, please be sure to join our national field organizing call. This week, we are going to have Jamie Raskin join us, a progressive champion who served as lead impeachment manager. But every Monday, we have amazing guests. This is coming up this Monday at 8:30. Sign up in the chat. All right, well, with that, it's 11 o'clock. So let's close our call as usual with our chant. Thank you so much for being here this beautiful Saturday morning to celebrate with us, to organize with us. And before we sign off, let's do our chant. At this point, all of our panelists, let's unmute our microphones and let's chant together. When we organize, we win. When we organize,
we win.
Thank you so much, everyone.